used to think confidence was about always knowing what to say. Now I think sometimes the most confidence thing you can do is to stop over explaining yourself, or even to say stop explaining yourself. Because the older I get, the more I realize that not every decision needs a defense from me as a person, as to say. And not everyone needs to understand why I choose what I choose or why I choose to say no. Confident people don't feel there's this something about confident people I've observed over the years. Confident people don't feel they need to explain everything they do. Sometimes no is simply no. Like, I don't get it. You don't have to create a long story to make a decision acceptable to someone else. I used to feel guilty of this before because I'm this kind of person that doesn't say no to people. But I have realized that you can say I can't or that doesn't work for me, and you still leave it there. Because saying no to something doesn't mean you don't care. That is what I used to think before. If I say no, that means I don't care. I don't want to help. Sometimes saying no simply means that I am choosing what matters most to me. And another thing I have observed about people that are confident or confident people per se is that confident people always don't feel ashamed about changing their minds. Like, for real, you can agree decision. You can learn something new. You can realize that what worked for you 6 months or 1 month, 1 year ago doesn't work for you anymore. So what am I trying to say? Changing your mind isn't always inconsistency. Sometimes it's growth because when you know better, you actually do better. You don't have to attend to every event or every gathering or every invitation that is thrown at you. First of all, you have to sit down and ask yourself, what is in this thing for me? Do I have enough resources to attend to them? If you don't, you can simply decline respectfully without over explaining yourself. Sometimes you just don't want to go. No, you might have the resources at sometimes, but you don't just want to go. And that's still okay. It's okay. So you don't need to prove that you are busy, tired, financially responsible, emotionally drained just to justify staying home. Your absence doesn't always need an explanation. I think this is what a lot of people need to understand. And talking about, I want to also reflect on this as relating to career. You don't have to constantly defend your career choices either. 'Cause I see a lot of my uh, recent graduates that are trying to justify why they choose the career they choose. You don't have to constantly defend your career choices either. People may not understand why you choose your path. They may have chosen something differently for themselves, and that is still okay. Your career is part of your journey, and you don't need everyone to agree with your direction for it to be right for you. And don't get me wrong, that does not mean you shouldn't accept advice. When you advise based on the career path and are seeing light in the advice you are giving, it's also very wise to listen and consider. Also, sometimes you need time alone, not because you are angry, not because you don't love people, not because something is wrong. Sometimes you simply need the space to think, to reset, to pray, to take a fresh breath and reconnect with your inner self. And you don't have to feel guilty about it. And sometimes I see that people will send you a message, especially on WhatsApp, and they will expect fast response. Another thing I'm learning is that being available doesn't mean being constantly accessible. You don't have to respond to every message immediately. You can put your phone down, you can take your time and respond when you have the capacity to actually give the conversation your attention. Because it's better to give your full attention in a response than just to give a response that doesn't um that doesn't answer the question that is being asked. So a delayed response is not necessarily disrespect. And that's another thing we need to. Then the final thing I want to talk about in this series of saying no is you don't have to convince everyone that your boundary is reasonable before you're allowed to have it. You can keep your boundaries. You don't have to keep explaining why something makes you uncomfortable. You don't have to argue someone into respecting your limits. Sometimes confidence is simply saying, this is what works for me, and being okay with the fact that someone else may not like it. Because confidence isn't about making everyone understand you. It's about being secure enough in who you are that you don't need someone else's approval to make a decision. So maybe confidence isn't always about having the perfect response. Maybe some confidence is knowing when you've said enough. And my question to you listening to me is, which one do you still find yourself over explaining? In which one of these categories do you still find yourself over explaining yourself to people? I'll hand the mic over to you. Let me hear your thoughts. Thank you. Bye.